This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides. So head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and various guests. And today I have to say, I am kind of beyond excited to have Kim Sear with me to chat. And that's because Kim is an avid gardener. She is Andy Murray's wife, but like all true ladies, in my view, she's kept her maiden name. I have too. Anyway, and in fact, I'll just tell you this rather sweet story of how I came across and met Kim, which is that I think I was either sitting in the dentist's or a doctor's waiting room. And you know that thing where they have rather old magazines often sitting on a sort of table. And I was flicking through a country living magazine, I think. There was an article about the hotel that Andy and Kim own and run in the Borders, near where Andy was brought up. It's called Cromlix, and it's the most incredible, luxurious and wonderful hotel. But anyway, so I was reading this article, and it was sort of about what gives them both joy. And there was a slightly tongue-in-cheek paragraph about what gives Andy joy, which is, of course, winning a tennis tournament, particularly Wimbledon. And what gave Kim joy was the Sarah Raven catalogue dropping through her letterbox. Well, you can imagine I leapt and yelped for joy, and everyone thought I was mad. No, I didn't really, but that was a rather lovely moment. So I contacted her because, of course, I knew she was then a customer, and asked her if we could chat about gardening and if she would come on the podcast. And actually, we're working together on a tulip collection and various other things. But anyway, welcome, Kim. That's a bit of a long-winded introduction, but it's very, very lovely to have you here.
No, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh, no, it's so nice. So let's get straight into gardening, I guess. So tell us a little bit about where you garden right now.
So we are in Surrey. That's a place called We were fortunate enough to build our forever home about 3 years ago. I was brought up down in Sussex, so not too far from here, but I'm a country girl at heart. We had a spell of living in Wandsworth for a little while after I finished uni, and Andy was based there, but he obviously has travelled non-stop for the last 2 decades. But I'm very much a home bird, and yeah, definitely an outdoorsy country girl. So we've got a lovely, lovely patch in Surrey, which is home, and we've got our children here and our chickens and our dog, and very happy. And they'd have to drag me out of here in a box, I think. So I'm not leaving. And I think it's our forever home, our forever garden, and as you know, kind of starting something from scratch because it was a new build, and we were fortunate enough that was the house and the gardens. It was something that I was fully invested in from the start and got to see literally from the ground up. And so, yeah, I'm new to gardening. I'm not an experienced gardener. I'm a total amateur, but I'm lucky to have a good team around us who help a lot. But yeah, it's our happy place, and that's home.
That's so nice. And I mean, describe it vaguely. So you've got like a lawn. I mean, I know the reason that I've come across you is that you love growing cut flowers to bring into the house, which maybe we could come on to. And I know in the hotel, you have tons and tons and tons of tulips for exactly that reason, don't you?
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit like a magpie. I kind of gather beautiful things. And I think that's probably where my connection with gardening started, because I've always loved cut flowers, and my mum, she's very green fingered, and she was always growing and cutting as we grew up. But I'd say probably as a young adult, I started really finding an enjoyment of probably the arranging side of things first. It's that idea of creating something. I used to paint many moons ago, and that's, I loved art. And so I think it's probably the same principle. It's creating something, just making something that looks beautiful. It's visually pleasing. It's kind of, stimulating on a sensory level. And that was probably what my initial motivation and introduction to gardening was from that. Whether it was, I've always done wreath making at Christmas
Oh,
with my
yeah,
friends,
yeah.
for example. And like, whether it's kind of gathering stuff from mum's garden to use for foliage for that, to then, the inevitable lockdown wreath making kits that we did then. I think that's probably where it stemmed from. I love creating things to, number one, to gift to people. I'd say that's almost like my love language, is dropping a bunch of flowers on a friend's doorstep. But yeah, I think probably bringing into the home as well, because it's just a lovely form of expression, and it's a way of connecting both the inside and the outside. Is seeing something that you can grow outside and then kind of bring inside and present in a slightly different way. Yeah, I love it. It's a passion, and I think that's it applies both at home, and then also that's what we're trying to do at Cromlix as well. And it's maybe a nice way of people who wouldn't describe themselves as gardeners, possibly an introductory way of them getting interested in what's going on outside. Is they may see something on a table and go, "What's that? Where's it come from?" And if it's outside, it's a good way of kind of starting that conversation, I guess.
And what sort of got you? Did your mum teach you a bit of gardening, or?
I would say, my granny has always grown the most amazing sweet peas, and that was something that I had a fascination with from a really young age. And they today are still, my favourite thing to grow. But I think I was so fortunate. My brother and I, we had such a lovely childhood. As I said, in the countryside, we were outside all the time. I can't say my mum was, a really disciplined gardener. She wasn't, we didn't have great herbaceous borders at home, but we were outside all the time. So it was just that appreciation for the outdoors, and a kind of outdoorsy childhood. We grew up right on the River Ouse, and spent our summers running around. There's wild garlic everywhere. It was gorgeous. And I think now, being a mum of 4 children, that's something that I feel really passionately about as well. I want my kids outside. I want them running around and just kind of having a real appreciation for the environment that they're growing up in. And I understand that it's a real privilege, but that's something I feel really strongly about.
Yeah, and any sign of any of them getting into gardening or being interested at all?
I mean, they love. I mean, small children are really nosy, aren't they? They follow you around everywhere, and they're interested in whatever you're doing. So I'd say sometimes it's hard. You can't actually get out there. It's hard to get stuff done with them a lot of the time. And it is hard because you want to, that dreaded kind of, "Mummy, can I help you?" It's like, it's really hard, but you have to encourage it. And it is lovely. They kind of, they can't do much constructively probably at their age, but they're outside all the time. They're really curious. They're always asking, "Mummy, what's that flower called? And what's this?" And I think to watch them watch the garden evolve, I think is wonderful. I'm not going to lie, when a 3-year-old takes a pair of scissors to all your alliums and beds, and like part of your soul dies, but it's all part of the process. You want something beautiful outside at the same time, but I'd much rather that it's something that they were engaged in.
Yeah, totally. And does Andy garden with you at all, or is it kind of more?
I'd say Andy, I mean, like I said, he's traveled so much over the last few years. There's probably, I would say he has much more of an appreciation now than he did. And it's something that hopefully in the future, I think he would get much more into. But I will say this year, we went crazy on the tulips this year for the first time. And he doesn't notice much of kind of what's going on in the garden, as long as it's all, looking good and happy and the kids are running around. He's happy. But he did stop this year and go, "Oh my goodness, the tulips are amazing." And absolutely, he loved them, and he kept talking about them. And I think they just really, he just loved them. I think structurally they added so much interest and so much colour. And I didn't tell him that I'd spent as much as a designer handbag on them, but he really thought they were wonderful.
Good. Yeah, you don't want him to see these Sarah Raven boxes coming down the drive. That's what we just got back from Chelsea, and lots of husbands were very funny about that. They said they have to block the bank account. Yeah. Anyway, and what do you feel? I mean, you obviously must have an incredibly busy life with 4 children and a husband that has such an intense work life. Do you find the garden is your kind of wind down, or is it your inspiration, or what's its sort of role in your life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's kind of pivotal to my everyday life. I'm always outside, whether it's up sorting the chickens out, or faffing around in the greenhouse, or just charging around chasing my children, who are usually out there. And I think it's central to. I mean, now I'm looking kind of quite critically at how shaping my children's upbringing, and I feel really strongly. I'm terrified of this screen thing that's happening with children, and social media and all of that stuff. And my counter to that is I really just want to encourage an appreciation for the outdoors. And so the more we can, but it's hard at the same time. I'm not going to lie, the winter's really rough in this country, and they'll bounce off the walls and they don't want to put their wellies and their coats on, for the third time that day. But I think it's just trying to make it as engaging and as appealing for them as possible so that, their first thing they want to do when they come home from school is go and, charge around and see what's going on. And so finding different ways to make that interesting for them, whether it's, sowing seeds in the greenhouse or, having a sunflower competition, see whose sunflowers are biggest.
Yes.
And they definitely take interest in all the, the sweet peas they love now. And like nasturtiums, my 6-year-old last year, she went around and she collected all the seeds from the ground and then she put them in her party bags for her 6th birthday.
Oh,
and I think, I thought it was so sweet. And it's just, it's that kind of thing. I think if you can just start encouraging that level of engagement, hopefully it will see them through the next bit of things.
Yeah. What ages are they?
So our youngest is 3 and then goes all the way up to 8. So it's quite a lot in quite a short.
Yeah.
It's very hectic and very noisy.
And a good mix of girls and boys.
We've got 3 girls and then Teddy, our third, he's kind of sandwiched in the middle. He's 4.
Wow. Yeah, your hands are full.
Very much so.
So I'd love to know various kind of, in a way, obvious questions, but do you have a favourite plant?
Oh, gosh. Well, I've mentioned sweet peas because the smell, I can't. Yeah, again, it's instant. It's evocative. It's really nostalgic, actually. It reminds me of my granny. So sweet peas, I love that every year. Some years I have better years than others, but I always do take great pride in my sweet peas. Roses are just, obviously, I love, can't have too many, in my opinion. But then I think things that probably since we planted up the garden now that I've got a real appreciation for that I probably wasn't aware of before are things like alchemilla mollis and nepeta and just, gorgeous things that I would use as almost fillers in arranging, but they tumble over your borders and your edges and kind of line your pathways and things in a really like romantic, wafty way. And I love alchemilla mollis because it'll go everywhere and you've got not much control over where it turns up, but it's quite fun to see where it decides to make home. Yeah.
And it's such that colour is just so good with all cut flowers as well, isn't it? It's just that sharpness is amazing. Great. And do you have a sort of favourite part of the garden that you find you're really attracted to go to?
I've got my kind of what I'd call our kitchen garden, which was very much its kind of cottagey cutting garden. That's right outside our kitchen. That's the bit that, the kids run straight outside. There's a sand pit in there making a great big mess of things as well. But that's kind of, you could see that it's got, amazing roses and delphiniums and lupins and all. It's quite Beatrix pottery. And then
yes, nice.
The rest of our kind of main lawn, our amazing landscape designer, Chris Moss, who did the garden for us, he was quite inspired by Peter Udolph's planting, which I myself love as well, because we're fortunate enough to be quite close to RHS Wisley. So I was really familiar with that landscape, kind of pushed buggies around there for hours when the kids were little.
Yeah.
And we both were really, really inspired by that. And it's just that incredibly effective use of perennials, the kind of swathes, the drifty, the grasses that then hold interest all the way through the seasons. I love it, in the winter, the frosty kind of seed heads and everything, which is really relaxing and really calming. So we have that. And then we have this random bit, which is around the back of one of our buildings, which we termed the rose graveyard to start with, which was where we basically all the roses, that people, it sounds terrible. It's a horrible way of putting it, but it's when, when someone will give you a rose on your birthday and we didn't have anywhere to put it. And we started shoving them around the back of this building. But it's actually then evolved into just like this amazing rose garden that's got, it's got the most, verbena and scabious and all sorts of stuff in it. And then the icing on the cake was Christmas this year just got Andy. I think Andy and I nearly got divorced over it because he ordered this enormous outdoor chess set that came for the children. I was like, none of them could play chess at that stage, but I think it was wishful thinking. And I had no idea what to do with it. And so now I've basically put it around this rose beds, and I just call it like the kind of wacky Alice in Wonderland, Queen of Hearts type vibe.
Brilliant.
But and again, that's another, the kids love, they'll run up to the chess set and they'll, move the pieces around all over the place. And it's just, another means of getting them out and round. And we've got a bench there. So I love that bit now because we sit there and the smell is just incredible. I mean, there is absolutely no rule or rhyme or reason whatsoever. It's just every rose you could ever think of kind of crammed on top of each other. But it's quite special because I think we've put that in ourselves and it's evolved
totally
through.
Evolved, yeah.
Yeah.
How nice, how nice. And just on the sort of Pete Aldorf, well, and into roses, really, do you have like a favourite palette or a favourite colour as you go through catalogues? Are there any particular colours or tones that attract you most?
It is interesting, isn't it? Because I'm sure you would know, or there's probably a reason behind it. But I do find like through the course of the year, the palette changes in the garden anyway, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I always seem to notice, is it right? Like purples almost pop out quite early on.
Yeah.
And then it seems like the temperature increases as you go through summer, and the colours get deeper and stronger. Everything grabs your eye. I love the kind of the soft, the kind of the lilacs and the whites early on, but then you start, by the time the dahlias come out, you're after something a bit bolder. And then, the kind of when the grasses all go to that orange, and, that's amazing in autumn. So I think I love when it comes to tulips, for example, I love the jewel tones. And I think, because I quite like that in interiors as well, I quite like putting some statement colours together and some slightly unpredictable combinations. So I think probably when it comes to tulips and dahlias in particular, I'd go for really strong colours, but you can't beat a kind of a peach or a light pink rose, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. So it does depend on what you're picking or do you still find time to paint?
Oh, do you know, I would love to. And I kind of came out of that period of, I had a large number of children in a short space of time, and you do lose yourself for a time whilst you're doing that. And I think I just started popping out of the other side of having babies, and I felt like I was finding myself again. And I was about to pick up a paintbrush, and then this hotel project kicked off, and I saw it as something I really wanted to get my teeth into, and I grabbed it with both hands. And I think that's really been my full-time job now, aside from the children, for the last 2 years, I'd say. But art's such an important part, both our lives. Andy loves art as well. So it's definitely something, I think wonderful thing about art and painting is you can always pick it up, and it's nice to return to it. And I do feel really guilty because I did a painting of our older 2 children, and I still haven't painted the younger 2. So that's hanging over me. That I need to paint the younger 2 kids at some point. Otherwise I think I've got serious mum guilt. But one day that'll be a project for the summer.
Gosh, so you do portraits. I mean, that's super skilled.
Well, only of my own children. I think I'd be too terrified to do painting to paint anyone else's child. But I did, for a while, I painted a lot of people's animals, and that I loved painting dogs. That's where that's what I got into. I really started with that. And then I think I dipped my toe into the water of portrait painting, but just of our children.
Wow. Well, that's it's not enough to say that you did art at school, which is what I think you said. I mean, you're obviously a great deal more experienced than that. Tell us, before you go, tell us about the hotel. So tell us about Cromlix and how it came about. And obviously I know it's connected to where Andy was brought up, and maybe talk about all that a bit.
So it's just outside Dunblane, where obviously Andy was born and raised, and a lot of his family still live there. And we bought the hotel 10 years ago now, and it was a really emotional decision. It was because it was it had been a venue where a lot of Andy's family had celebrations and things over the years, and it had closed down. And I think Andy was really connected to the idea of it being something local, but we didn't have any kind of capacity to run it ourselves. So we had a management company oversee it for 10 years for us. And then, it was just kind of fortuitous timing, really. It contract came about, and it was just circumstances that we kind of were at a crossroads, and we had to decide what we were going to do with it. And I think we just felt like it needed a change of direction. And I'd finished building our house, I'd finished having babies, and I just thought I'd love to get my hands on that. And if I didn't do it, someone else would, because it's the most amazing setting. And it's, that we could never look away from that, the connection and its locality, and it's where it's situated, being so close to Andy's childhood home. So, and it's wonderful. And it's been eye-opening and really educational, and challenge at times, because I think I've been kind of involved in every area of running it as a business. But obviously the really fun bit was the interiors. We did a big refurb. We closed for a few months, and we refurbished at the beginning of last year. And we've been so inspired by the outside. That's been a big thing. Andy goes up and he's like, we've got quite a lot of floral wallpapers, but I was like, I absolutely love it, because that was my thing. I wanted to bring colour and kind of just life into the building. I just felt like it needed a bit of TLC, and it's situated in this, it's an old Victorian building. It's situated, and it's got about 30 acres. It's got a loch, it's got loads of woodland, and it's not a grave tie. It doesn't have huge herbaceous borders, but it's, the Scottish landscape, as I'm sure you know, is just it's incredible and it's so unique. The colours and everything and the wildlife that we've got up there. So yeah, we've always had a kitchen garden there, and we do a lot with the kitchen and directly from the garden and producing things to serve in the restaurant. But I think we've got a wonderful gardener up there called Sarah also, who, when the two of us got together and started really thinking about the direction we wanted to go in, we just both love, cut flowers. And it was, we used to outsource all the flowers for the hotel, and actually now being able to do it on site has just been amazing. And the stuff she's come up with, it started with just, huge bunches of mint and nasturtiums tumbling around everywhere. And now we've kind of moved that. We've still got the kitchen garden, the edible side of things, but we've expanded and we're kind of putting much more energy and thought into what we can grow to bring directly into the house. And the feedback's been amazing. People love it, because I just wanted it to feel like a home. And our home, I'm just always filling every surface with just whatever, because I love it. I think there's no better way to make something feel lived in and guests feel welcome than, a bunch of something next to a bed. And that's what I wanted us to achieve there as well, is just like, stuff tumbling off every surface. And it's been a real joy to experience that.
Yeah, how very nice. I guess before we end, what's a big project for the future? What are you going to be up to, Kim, over the next year or two?
Well, we've got plans at Cromlix to put in some eco cabins in the woodland. So that's probably the next thing. So developing that. And we've got a few exciting developments up there that we're still working on. And I think, that Cromlix, for me, the reason I was so invested in developing it is because it's just, there's so much potential there that I don't think had been realised. So just continuing to see that grow and develop is, a joy and something that I'm really excited about. And just keeping my kids on the straight and narrow, I think, which is enough of a challenge.
Absolutely. God, well, it's so lovely to meet you. And I hope you might come back and we might talk tulips or whatever at another time.
I'd love to.
When it's tulip planting time.
Oh, yeah, exciting.
So nice to chat. And thanks so much for joining me.
No, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Grow Cook Eat Arrange with Kim Sear. And I hope you loved hearing her over the airwaves and getting to know her through her garden. I certainly did. Next week, I'm joined by Adam, my husband, Adam Nicholson, and we're going to talk about Bird School, his book, and the things he's been learning about recently about both feeding birds and nesting boxes. And as we head from summer into autumn and then winter, it's kind of relevant to think about it now and have a few yeses, the do's and the don'ts of bird feeding and trying to enhance more birds into your garden. So see you then. You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.